point to things on the slides over here. I'm a board certified internist and cardiologist, and what am I doing talking about hooves? It's a bit of a story. I do a lot of diagnostic ultrasound. I do cardiac work, abdomens, but most of what I'm known for is musculoskeletal ultrasound imaging, so tendon and ligament injuries. I started this hoof dissection project in collaborating with Dr. Deborah Taylor, who's a fellow board certified internist, and Dr. Lincoln Stone, who's a pathologist at the University of Kentucky Veterinary Diagnostic Lab. And as part of my job, I have to ultrasound tendon and ligament injuries and provide recommendations for rehabilitation. And I had said to my clients for over 10 years that hoof distortion is a soft tissue injury and needed to be managed as such, so it wasn't a quick fix. You can see these are very expensive horses in Lexington, Kentucky. Performance horses, race horses, and this is what their feet look like. And it's difficult to ask a farrier to come in and fix this right now. So I recommend that they take the time when they're rehabbing their horses with tendon or ligament injuries to go slowly and to get their hooves to, quote, snap back if they can. And my colleagues don't talk too much about the ability of the hoof capsule to come back to itself when they're given time out of shoes. And this is a 2-year-old thoroughbred filly, and she became very distorted in the training facility she was at, closed-toe shoes, and just shot forward. And the manager put her to a rehab facility, and she had her shoes removed and was walked less than an hour a day. And remarkably, her hoof capsules snapped back, popped up. And these are hoof casts from Deborah Taylor's study that she's going to be talking to you about on Friday. And I had the opportunity to examine these down at Auburn. It was amazing. So these on the top are from the same hoof and 9 months apart. These horses were race horses. The shoes were removed and they were put into a barefoot race training program. By the time the second cast was taken, they were training, galloping barefoot. They would have to race with shoes, but the shoes were left on for less than 24 hours. And it was amazing that in spite of this full-blown work they were doing, the hoof capsules changed dramatically and improved. Dr. Taylor and I came up with a measurement study or system to assess it more accurately, and proximal hoof circumference actually changes along with distortion, so it can increase or decrease as the soft tissues in the back of the hoof change. And on the top hoof, the width across the back exits of the collateral grooves, and measure that distance, and that's a great way to measure for heel retraction. And in both these hooves, the top and the bottom, the heel, that width increased, so that's great. And in the bottom hoof, also the plumb height from the collateral groove exits at the back of the hoof to the hairline, plumb measurement, also increased. And then we came up with what I call the Reimer ratio, just to irritate my critics. And it's the ratio of that distance across the back of the collateral groove exits relative to the hoof circumference, coronary band circumference. And you'll find that most horses that you want to manage are about 19 to 21%. When they get very narrow, like down to 15, 12%, you're looking at navicular syndrome risk. And this was a client's horse that became distorted in closed-toe shoes, a mystery to farriers and veterinarians wondering why the horse was getting short-strided. And it pancaked out. I said, just leave him bare, keep him moving in good footing, and have your farrier come out frequently, little bits at a time. He'll know what to do. And just in 2.5 months, the dramatic change in the hoof capsule came back, popped up, looks great. So what does that? Is it this magic viscoelastic property of the hoof capsule that pulls it back into shape? Or is it frog stimulation?
Whenever you're still with an open-heel shoe, you're lifting the caudal portion of the foot up off the ground, which allows your frog and everything to prolapse. And whenever you're taking your shoe off, you're letting your horse go barefoot. You're actually letting the foot operate like it's supposed to.
Yes, you're getting close. So what actually is pulling that hoof capsule? How's it getting back and popping up? And you see this all the time. Like if you are trimming a horse, and even if it's been barefoot or you're taking the shoes off, you start on one foot, you go around, you come back to the first one, you're like, that looks even better, right? And I remember one horse, 2-year-old colt came off the track, heel bumps flat on the ground, and had some suspensory ligament injuries, and I said, well, get his farrier to come out, get the shoes off, he'll know what to do. Went back 2 months later, and it was amazing. The heel bulbs had just snapped up, came upright, but one foot it didn't happen to, and I thought maybe something's broken. But anyway, you have to realize what does this, because this is the key to understanding everything, and why the topic of today's lecture is about the deep flexor tendon. So it's a deep digital flexor tendon that does that. So remember that it's firmly attached to the coffin bone, and that coffin bone, if you ever tried to dissect a hoof and take the hoof wall and the sole off, virtually impossible unless you do oiling or if it's rotten. So this is the deep digital flexor tendon. And you can download these videos. This was a study done, it was a pilot study just looking at imaging for research purposes. And this is CT images superimposed over fluoroscopy images. And just watch what happens. So you can see that deep flexor tendon pulling that coffin bone and the rest of the bone column up, and there's a delay from the hoof capsule. So that also must indicate perfusion as well. So the deep digital flexor tendon is what normally pulls the hoof capsule back when it becomes distorted. And these show the pattern. This horse was barefoot for several months, and she was applied close to a shoe, and in 2 weeks, you can see how the pigment bars have migrated forward. And I took this because I wished the farrier put the shoe further back, and the next farrier following year did just that. And in 4.5 weeks, everything shifted forward. And you might say, well, I just need to do it more often, but the farrier didn't want to do that because it didn't have much sole depth. But also look how the coronary band was pulled downward. So you have the lower heel angle. So all that deep flexor is like, can I have my hoof capsule back? So it keeps migrating forward because it can't. And all these tissues are then pulled down underneath the back of the hoof. And on this, this is 6 years after that photograph. The horse had been bare for quite some time. And you can see, unfortunately, how much caudal foot volume he lost. The coronary band is coming way down. Heel anchors are low because he's lost all the tissues back here. But you can look at the deep flexor still while it's bare, trying to pull that hoof capsule back. But meanwhile, you have all this wall directed and growing from the coronary band, growing towards the toe. So it's just not able to keep up. So these are difficult to manage.
So if I'm looking at these feet correctly, if you look at the pigmented part of the foot, you can see the change in the tubules in the back half of the foot.
Right. Yeah. And even at the bottom, so you can see down here where everything's shifting forward, and here it's just a lost cause. Everything's migrating forward, the whole wall is, the tubules, intertubular matrix.
Do you find your ungular cartilage?
Sorry?
Do you find your ungular cartilage using the caudal portion of the foot, which actually pushes your tubule forward? Do you notice how those shift?
The cartilage are passive, and the ligaments I'm going to talk about are actually what's pulling everything down. And it's the action of the bones, which we'll talk about in the second talk, which will tie everything together so it makes sense. And this is an example where you really have to be careful. So this is a mare, hind foot, hunter jumper, and she had soft tissue injuries, suspensory branch, and oblique sesamoidian ligament injuries in the pastern area. And the farrier had done her recently, apparently. She's in a rehab facility, and directed by 2 sports medicine veterinarians, and I'm like, oh, she's perfect to just leave bare while she's rehabbing, but Reimer, go away and shut up. But what happened is he reset her. It's maybe hard to tell, but you can see how the heel angle dropped way down, her coronary angle dropped down, and because the deep flexor can't pull the hoof capsule back, everything's getting pulled down lower and lower. And when you watch the heel bolts, we'll talk about what's underneath those. And this is the key to knowing when you're in trouble, when you can tell an owner, you know, I can patch this up for you, but you're facing some difficult decisions here. But you watch this plump heel bolt height, and it will get lower and lower and lower. And that's very important because there's 3 things underneath there that are important for you. The other reason I'm involved in this is my own experience with my horses. I adopted Kai. He had never raced. He was an off-track thoroughbred, and moved to Kentucky, so I was an associate in Middle Equine Hospital. I took the role of a horse owner. You know, I had my little business in internal medicine and cardiology, had the benefit of having these experts there to rely on and help guide me on decisions. And in spite of efforts by everybody, by farriers, it went very badly, and had to euthanize him at 14 years of age. And he started to have problems at that magic age, around 6, getting close nail, abscess, long toe, low heel was developing. And so I was determined to be more vigilant, to watch the hoof capsules, just talk to farriers, let them know if I had any concerns, if the horse wasn't moving well. And so I adopted Carson, unraced, thoroughbred, and a nightmare was happening all over again. So at 6 years of age, he started to get distorted hoof capsules. He wasn't lame, but the farrier again was using the practice through middle podiatry, and they recommended Roberto shoes, which actually made him lame, and pulled those, and he was sound, left him bare, but it was the start of deterioration. And some people will say, well, cut those toes off, you know, just chop the toes off, because that will decrease leverage on the deep flexor tendon, so it can pull that hoof capsule back. The problem is, which some of you may know, that backfires sometimes. The horses will get sore if you trim too much and you take away the surrounding wall, or if you pull the toe of the shoe back, the owners might tell you, no, he's just not right, he's just not happy, he's backed off. And when you dissect these feet, so this is a healthier foot, and it matched up their sizes, so coffin bone. Then you have the solar soft tissues, and you can see, you might want to say, well, look at all this toe hair, just want to chop that off, take away that leverage. And what's going to happen? All these solar soft tissues are prolapsed forward too. So they're halfway between the tip of the toe and the coffin bone. So you can understand why some of these horses, you can't just do that. So if a veterinarian or owner says, I want you to back the toe off, I want you to back it up, then you can kind of get an idea, you might get into trouble. And I compare this to the flimsy, inelastic sock you're walking around in, and it gets pulled down by your heel every time you take a step, and ends up bunching up in the ball of your foot, the toe sticks out. But it's similar to that. So it's important to remember. And another thing is horses with sole prolapse, which is actually coffin bone prolapse. So this horse had been shod by, been barefoot for quite some time, shod by a really excellent podiatrist, extremely well-beveled shoe. When I was going to send him to a hippotherapy program, I thought, well, I should have shoes back on him. And the next day he was lame by day 3, crippled, abscess leg, and Dr. Agnew came out, looked everywhere, said, I can't find any reason for this horse to be that lame, pulled the shoe off, examined, couldn't find anything. And he said, it must have a deep bruise. And so I treated him as such, soaked him, kept him booted, and 4 weeks later, some fine cracks in the sole came up, and just rasped him off. He had this bruise right here. We've seen that before sometimes on these horses. And I thought, how is that possible? The hoof could have smacked against that shoe there because it was so well beveled. I remember picking it up out of the recycling. I was like, how could this be? It made no sense. And what's happening, I believe, is there's shearing of the solar soft tissues by the coffin bone. And I was doing a radiographic study with Dr. Taylor. I try to stay in a little zone of ignorance and don't want a radiographic machine. I hardly ever look at them. I just stick with ultrasound. But I wanted to look at coffin joints and extension. And we were at this thoroughbred reschooling facility. and took radiographs standing and then trying to get the coffin joint extended, and I superposed the radiographs. But look what happened. So you can see the hoof capsule stayed stuck, or where it was, and then as we extended the coffin joint, that coffin bone pulled back, and you can imagine it's shearing against those sensitive vascular soft tissues. So I think that's what's causing these bruises that you might encounter, especially in the thinner soled horses. And it's a really difficult weakness to detect. Negative to hoof testers. So this horse was negative to hoof testers, which is really alarming. And then eventually got to the point where it squeezed, nothing, but it walked away a little more sore. So I think that's something that you might encounter where everybody's scratching their head, negative to hoof testers, and it might just be that.
When you say thin sole, are you talking about 10 millimeters, 5 millimeters? How much are you considering thin?
That's a good question. I don't know. And it's probably also their solar soft tissues are atrophied and displaced, so it may also be, no matter what their sole depth is, those solar soft tissue depth is really important, and we need to be measuring that on radiographs. So if you have a centimeter of sole depth of none of its solar soft tissues, then those horses can be very sore.
So is the bruising, is the solar torium and patella of the sole, are they actually then damaged with the bruised sole?
I don't know. Dr. Teddo thinks some of these horses with laminitis and her, I stay away from laminitis cases, but they amputate their terminal patella with their coffin bone. So that would fit very much with that. So back to Carson, again, just going downhill, and I knew it was coming. You could look at his hoof caps and go, everything was reversing. And, I'd have to put a shoe or something on him to keep him comfortable off the ground that hard, but try to keep him barefoot as much as possible. But it was what I call a suicide hoof. So everything was going reverse. Every step he took, the hoof capsule was migrating forward, the heel bulbs were folding in down underneath the hoof. Instead, the opposite happened. So the deep flexor couldn't do its job, and it was a nightmare. And so I had these radiographs taken back at age 13 in 2010, and it was in serious trouble. I walked down to the podiatry group and I'm like, hey guys, any ideas? And they're like, no, just go away. So, which was fine. But you could see how much he deteriorated in that time. And then by age 16, you could see his radiographs would have been much, much worse than at this point. And you can see his invaginated heel bulb, secondary thrush, a dead-looking hoof, both front. And so I tried something I had tried before, and it worked really well, and I thought, this is impossible on another horse. But I finally said, I gotta try something, because his heel bulbs just needed to get off the ground. And so I had thought about this for a long time, and finally did it. So I straightened a St. Croix Highland Inventor shoe, and so I had it, shaped it like this, and I told Dr. Taylor, I said, I don't know what it is about this arc. It's the same, so it fits every horse. You just get the size of the shoe. And for me, 5 hammers, and for you, 1, it straightens out molecules of aluminum, work amazingly well. But she said it's the arc of the coffin bone. And I'm like, oh my God, that's so right. So here you can see what I'm following is arc of the coffin bone and to the collateral cartilage. So I go back to the hairline. I use minimal acrylic on the sole. And I found that, ironically, because I thought, this isn't going to work. Why make a big mess and why waste this stuff? And it turned out that was a very good idea not to use too much. So I use very little, but I wrap around put it on the sidewalls and up around the heel. And then remember the spread zone here. That's where your coffin bone is going to be moving. So I try to taper the inner toes, and then also no glue in front of the apex of the frog. And that's where the deep flexor tendon is attaching to the coffin bone. And there was an article in American Farrier Journal, a study with Stud, where the farrier had usually placed his nails behind the apex of the frog. He called it the center of energy. And for the same reason, that's where this attachment is. And he found when he placed nails forward, where you're traditionally taught to, the clinches would pop, the horses weren't moving as well. And it was a really interesting study, so worth checking in, but it's the same principle. So nail placement may be a big factor. So many people say, oh, this horse, it's all about the trim. This hoof wasn't trimmed properly. But I'm thinking maybe it was distorted. You don't know what it looked like 4 weeks ago. And some hoofs can distort in 3 weeks easily. So the other thing is to use a squared contour to the heel so it's stable and doesn't roll. And then the other interesting thing is I found that the horses that did need this, it had to be at least 6 millimeters in height. And once it got less than 6 millimeters, the distortion recurred, and then it just were like, oh, there's really no difference for me. And I think that has to do with solar soft tissues that are missing or atrophied in these horses. So these are obviously not correct, so this is how it should look. This is what and I tried this actually, and another farrier did it. I'm like, hey, that's cool. This is what happens. This is why you can't use this type of shoe. It's unstable heels. Then on this hoof here, you can see the branches need to be straightened more, toe needs to be tapered, and everything needs to be pulled back further. Now these are, in spite of me, sitting the first time with these individuals, people say farriers never listen. How about veterinary farrier? So these are 2 veterinary farriers versions, which obviously doesn't work. So too much glue, that hoof's not going to be able to move, and there's nothing good about that. But owner paid a lot for it, I'm sure. So I first put this on the left foot of Carson and took a picture 4.5 weeks later, like magic, nothing migrated forward. And he had these long-standing toe cracks that got worse and worse. He'd get them every time he had shod since I adopted him. They'd grow out when he was spare, shoes back on, then developed at the proximal point where they never grew out, and they just got really nasty and angry because his whole hoof capsule was distorted. And you can see what happened to his other foot during that time, just splattered right out. So like, well, let's see what happens. So this is that right foot from the medial side, and this is trimmed 4.5 weeks from a trim, just going the opposite way it should. Deep flexor is not able to pull it back. And then this is actually 6 weeks from a trim, and at 6 weeks in the shoe, took it off, took a picture. Amazing, it stayed. So I enabled the deep digital flexor tendon to say, okay, I got the leverage, and I got the airspace under the coffin bone to be able to pull everything back and up. And toe cracks, critics said this is going to cause toe cracks. But if you look, I think many horses with toe cracks, actually these are performance horses or former performance horses, it's in relation to hoof capsule distortion. So you realize that hoof capsules, and when they lose those back tissues, that hoof capsule is really distorted and wrapped around the entire area, coffin bone's even distorted. And look what happened. Over 7 months, these toe cracks grew out. It's pretty amazing. And so I don't have a radiograph machine, but I was like, oh, they get radiographs. So again, they would have been far worse in 2013 than in 2010. But wow, look at that. So what happened is the coronary band is repositioned. So the deep flexor tendon pulled everything back. All those tissues are attached, came back up, coronary band repositioned. And now you didn't have to wait for all this new wall growth. It just shifted back, like it does in some horses when you get them out of shoes and magically snaps back. So that was great. And here we have how narrow and distorted everything was, and nice and round. And the caudal tissues were looking healthy. And at first I thought, well, it's just because they're off the ground and they're getting some bruisers. But it was more than that. I finally realized, oh my God, the back of the hoof is changing. And that's sometimes when these horses, that are chronically like that, no matter what you do, that's really hard to do sometimes because your anatomy's been destroyed back there. But here we can see and this is all coffin bone distortion. When you have these narrow tubes like that, that means the coffin bone is distorted too. But here, much healthier, happier foot. And then when I finally realized, oh my God, what I'm doing and put it back in, and this took probably about a year for him, but some horses that happens much faster. Like the caudal tissues just blew up, frog cleft came back, it was in there for years. So my question was that, is it just giving the deep flexor tendon the leverage it needs rather than this toe clearance? And this was a iliumnal, more blood crossed, really pancaked out sole, laying in closed-toe shoes, and I went to scan the pasture, nothing there. You know, didn't block to a PD, typical history. It's like, you know what, I bet he's sore with this get up here, and they took his shoes off, sound, and comfortable footing. So we I showed the owner how to put the acrylic on, and so he just put this acrylic, just extending the heels, making the heel base wider, and amazing. This is no trimming. The hoof capsule was pulled back and up. Deep flexor had the leverage it needed to say, okay, I got you, pulling you back up. But what happens when you take it away? So it's not a matter of improper trimming or something like that. Something's broken. And on the hind feet, it works amazing. What I'll do is cover the acrylic with a little bit of aluminum bar stock, 1/8 inch thick, or polycarbonate plate, 1/8 inch thick. And that will keep it from wearing down, and it lasts forever. And you have to actually take it off when you're ready to do something. So you just back the toe up as the deep flexor pulls the hoof capsule back.
So is the acrylic providing the expansion that you're looking for?
It provides the leverage for the deep flexor tendon.
What do you mean by that?
So the deep flexor tendons been, all these ligaments in the back we talked about have been destroyed, the anatomy is destroyed, so it is, can't do anything. So you give it leverage.
How does the expansion to the side of the heels providing that leverage? That's what I don't understand.
Oh, because you're extending the heel base back, making it better.
So not as much as wide, but long.
Yeah, so you have to extend it back and a little bit wider, so you're making a better heel base. So these horses that have narrow heels or they're worn down, just giving them a little better heel base.
Did you notice any difference if you had a shoe that was fit that way instead of just the acrylic? Like if the horse was shod with a shoe that way?
So with a closed-toe shoe, it doesn't happen. So that's when you have that toe leverage working against you.
Like that?
So some horses need that toe clearance, especially on the front. And so the hind feet, this works great on. It's a little different mechanism how the hind foot operates. But this is looks like a front foot. It's so distorted. But in 24 days, just extending the heel base, making it a little wider and longer, bring it back. So you can see how puny this heel base is. So I just said, okay, you should be back here a little bit. Just made a little acrylic patch and it changed the total contour. It looks more like a normal hind foot. And then on this horse, always work it on the lateral heels behind. And then again, uncomfortable with hock sore, back sore, stifle sore. And just by putting the acrylic on the lateral heel, which was wearing down where he was putting that weight, it helped the deep flexor pull the hoof capsule back and up, and he's happy camper. And this is not trimmed. There's no trimming. So this is all deep flexor saying, okay, now I can do my job. And Dr. Taylor texted me that she had a present for me a few years ago, and I was very excited because critics had also insisted, some of my colleagues, that P3 would plummet between the branches of my shoe and protrude to the bottom of the foot. And I'm like, no, it actually does the opposite. So this is a 28-year-old racehorse, ex-racehorse, really distorted hoof capsule, and she followed, looked at, showed her how I did my technique. She said, I want to see exactly how I do it, and this is what happened. Beam me up, Scotty. So literally the deep flexor tendon is able to pull the hoof capsule back and up. This is just over 4 months. So you can imagine how the tension on deep flexor tendon is reduced. This horse was so happy, he had a girlfriend, he's riding around, all happy, and this is the other hoof. Beam me up, Scotty, look at the sole depth, and also notice that we're getting concavity in the sole. So everything's being lifted up. Yes?
Does the open-toe bar shoe have a similar effect?
Pardon?
Does an open-toe bar shoe have a similar effect?
Exactly. So we'll get into that later. So yes, exactly. So then these are the heel bulbs, and they're all shriveled up. This is on the left foot. She didn't have ones on the right. And look at that. Amazing. They came up and out.
how much turnout was the horse able to have, or do you want to see the horse have? Can the horse be out in the field?
Yeah, so my guys,
Local
like,
pasture,
go have fun.
Just
So, yeah, so, and actually these have been used, Grand Prix jumping, and an owner whose horse's feet have become very prolapsed. And the thing is, when they're in closed toe shoes or restricted, that we'll go into that, the internal mechanisms are fighting, they're still gonna fight. And so the more they exercise sometimes with a device that's trapping those to some degree, I think the more they distort. So she had a couple horses really just bottomed out their soles, and she knew, and they were, falling over jumps and having trouble, and put my shoes on. She wanted to do it herself, and she was like, oh my God, like a 2-year-old colt leaping in the air. So she's like, took a horse that had used to be a Grand Prix level jumper and couldn't even jump 4 feet. She fell, she was pulling rails, and put these on, and it was wing, and went on and competed up to meter 45 or meter 5 even on these. And it's amazing that these 2 pieces stay on. And another collaborator of mine has used them in race horses on the grass in another part of the world. And these horses that were just like, my feet hurt, the deep flexors are, and all 4 feet, and 3 horses, and so it's weird. So it's like, it seems to fit what the hoof and what the deep flexor is trying to do. So I asked Dr. Bowker, I'm like, what's going on with this? What is this happening with my shoe? And he said, well, it's all about perfusion. Perfusion is key. And so I was reading more about his stuff, and he talks about these microvessels and the digital cushion and how they get stimulated and engorged and support all the navicular bone and all that. And so I literally Googled this because I thought maybe this is the same tissue I dissected in vet school. And sure enough, I took a screenshot. I Googled this. And yes, Dr. Bowker said, oh my goodness. All right, so I discovered hoof Viagra. And so, you know what happens when you take hoof Viagra away? It shrivels up. So these horses that were non-responders, that everyone's like, oh, you didn't trim it right, you didn't have this right stimulation, you didn't do this right. No, something's broken back there. And so then I realized I gotta find out what it is. And this is the elephant in the room that nobody talks about. We don't understand it, or we didn't, and we just dismiss this as a passive event when the heel bulbs get distorted. But that's been a big mistake of veterinary medicine because there's major anatomy going on underneath, and it's more than digital cushion. And if you think, okay, which of these hooves would you rather have in your client base? Which is going to be easy to manage if it gets laminitis? Which is going to be easier to manage if the owner wants to go barefoot or put anything on? These are good. This is not going to be horses that are good to manage. And this is what we see in sport horses. Nobody looks at the back, so we got to be more careful. So the instant response is, oh well, it's a digital cushion. And these are 3D printouts from Dr. Taylor and Pete Raymond who did these studies. This is invaginated heel bulbs, nothing in the back here, no digital cushion. But these spikes right here are where the ligaments I'm going to talk about actually attach to the cartilages up high. So they're actually ligament attachments. And on this hoof, which is better, you can see there's more digital cushion, which should be composed 50% of ligaments. And may have some fibrocartilage, may not, but all this stuff is gone under P2. In addition, the cunion part, which is the bottom part, toric on top, cunion on bottom, which is more fibrous, and it's this downward pooching of the digital cushion from above, is absent in this horse, where there it is, and it's blending with the sole in this hoof. But it was more than that, so I had to stomach it and start cutting up hooves because I felt we had missed something as veterinarians. And so went down to the shoeing school when they were doing the hoof, and you can see he's not very contracted. They removed the hoof capsule, he's got thick cartilages, and this is, classic chicken fat. What's wrong with talking about? There's nothing back there. Well, as Bowker pointed out, a lot of cadaver hooves are bad, and this is nothing. There's no consistency to that at all. And I ended up pulling this hoof out of the renderer's freezer to take up to a clinic with Paige. And I was getting very frustrated because most of the hoofs I brought up were bad, and there's hardly anything in there. But I thought, this looks like he has robust heel bulbs. And this was like the holy grail. And I was like, oh my God. So I just cut the top of the heel bulbs off so we're looking down on them. And look at all this was like cartilaginous tissue. So this is this mysterious fibrocartilage, which I think is actually coating the ligaments that we'll talk about. So it's just amazing. I'm like, oh my God, this is what it's supposed to be like. And then this nice rubbery frog spine. And on top of that, look at this caudal sole depth. So this is where we're measuring the back of your heel bulbs, or the heel bulbs in the back is really important. So this is typical, racehorse, off-track thoroughbred, nothing. No caudal sole depth. And this may relate to palmar plantar ankles. And that hoof I just showed you, look at all that sole depth. So you have all this rubbery frog spine, and even above the frog is rubbery sole, that triangle of rubber sole. Amazing. And just to remember, the frog is covering this part of the digital cushion, and the funion part that comes down. So you can see it's pretty close if you were to shave off that frog. And also look at all this rubbery sole right where the frog is covering. So that's really important to recognize. The frog's just a covering, and there's so much more underneath it. So the question is, what is all this super padding doing in the back of the foot? I was like not getting it. It just didn't make sense to me. The rubbery frog spine, super padding. So I started reading about hoof biomechanics, and I'm like, oh God, that was tough. And then I realized it seems like most researchers were thinking the hoof hits the ground like that. And I'm like, okay, so this digital cushion is absorbing vibrations. It still doesn't make sense, and especially this rubbery frog spine is bothering me. Like, why is it back there? What is it matching up with? And it wasn't until I was taking radiographs with Dr. Taylor in this study. We lifted up the other leg on these horses. And I was standing right there holding the plates and didn't notice. But when we lifted up the other leg up, look how much the fella was dropping on the radiographs, and that you can see this flexor tuberosity of P2 is pressing on the deep flexor, just lifting the other leg up. And then it didn't matter, like this is hoof with nothing in the back here, same thing. So pressing down, and I'm like, oh my God, now I get it. Now I get why the digital cushion's in the back of the foot. And went out to the horse park. It was the last warm day. So the quarter horse walking. Look how much, look 2-year-old quarter horse, how much that fetloc's dropping in behind, a little bit in the front, just at the walk. And I purposely took, non-thoroughbred, more bloods. Here's a little stadium course, a 2'7" stadium course, warm-up, a paint course. Just looking at how much those fetlocks are dropping. And then, of course, the 100 jumper, but this is only a 3-foot course. And now I realize why there's an erg up there, because it's hitting the ground sometimes, and why there's all this sand in the back of the fetlock they have to clear up, and maybe why some of these thoroughbreds are imploding their fetlock when it hits the ground. And it was amazing. Some people said, oh, no, that's not normal, that's not normal. And it's faster than the eye. So this is an 8-year-old quarter horse. Once you see it in slow-mo, like, okay, now I get it. And Dr. Pollitt, in his video, which is on vimeo.com, posted it, or made it in 1992, posted it 3 years ago. There's this beautiful video of this thoroughbred galloping, and he said this is still a normal position for a horse's foot when the fetlock is down and level with the top of the foot, and obviously during locomotion as opposed to standing. So when we're standing around looking at the hoof, we talk about biomechanics. We got to remember that the standing hoof is not really loaded at all. It's like a runner in the starting blocks, like a horse ready to bolt. So what you are taking care of is these hooves. These are the hooves you're taking care of, at least to performance horses. May have some back cuts that are just gipping around. But just remember that similar to the bow and arrow, knock, draw, loose. It's in the knock position, and when they draw, that fetlock's coming down, and they're going to spring back up. So then I finally got what Pete Ramey and Deborah Taylor were talking about as far as having this soft tissue space behind P3. Oh man, now I get it. So you can see during fetlock, when the fetlock drops, all this is for the other phalanges. So the hoof is for not just P3. And when you have nothing in the back, you can see how the posture joint is hanging out the back, there's no support, and you can see how this would increase risk for posture joint arthritis, breakdown, etc. That all now makes sense to me. And so I searched YouTube for anywhere for fluoroscopy videos to see what happens in live horses. And this is a warm blood trotting, and I just looped this section, and I got permission from Dr. Alan Wilson from the RBC to use this. And it's actually posted by Farrier on YouTube. And you can see during the trot, and I just looped this one short section, how the fetlock is dropping, and all those posture joint and P2 and gluteal P1 are slamming on that, and the hindfoot especially. Now you can imagine how negative plantar angles are such a problem. So, somebody else said that. Dr. James Rooney in 1967 said the digital cushion is for the descent of the phalanges, and Dr. Helen Davies said in fluid management, it's for the posture joint. And when I was working with Dr. Taylor, she had these cadaver bones she had done soft tissue imaging on. I said, let's just cut off the heel bulbs. You know, what's under the bulbs? So we cut off at the caudal exits with the collateral grooves, and we're just like trying to piece things together, and now it all made sense. So when you look at these, you know, you have good landing gear, nice amount of landing gear, not too good there, still the frog spine, but not much. What else is the digital cushion for? It's right there. What does, another reason veterinarians been involved. What is the digital cushion for? Deep flexor tendon. That's going to come slamming down onto that. So as the fetlock drops, P2 and P1 are going to be right on top and mash it down onto this back tissue there. So the digital cushion, so we have the top part, the toric part, the cuniate part down here, the rubbery frog spine, all this rubberized sole is for the deep digital flexor tendon to protect it. And then as you notice, there's fibrocartilage in the deep flexor tendon right against the flexor tuberosity of P2 for protection. So obviously it would need something on the bottom when it gets smashed down. So now if you look at these hooves, we cut the heel balls off and go, okay, I get it. Good landing gear, not so good. Bad landing gear. Bad landing gear, no frog spine, small amount of cushion, not much there. And then when you look at the feet from the back, and you want to see these nice parallel collateral cartilages, you can imagine those phalanges, the other one's coming down and landing right in the middle there. And this 2-year-old filly with fetlock and meat chips, she's going to smash right on her cartilages. It's going to be a mess, and no wonder she's got all these musculoskeletal injuries. So the other thing to remember, which I didn't realize until I started doing dissections, is that deep flexor tendon is a real weirdo from P2 distally. You have all this fibrocartilage, the P2 flexor tuberosities mashing down, and again here for the navicular bone, you flip it over, you can see how it gets bilobed, and there's this almost divide in the deep flexor. And then these are the ligaments we'll talk about that are actually fused to the back of the inner ligament, which is fused to the deep flexor from P2 distally. And then I finally figured out what this rubber frog spine was for. I was like so excited because it was bothering me, like frog spine, what is it? Anybody see what it would match up with? Yep, that little crotch in the deep flexor tendon. So the rubbery frog spine is going to fit right there. It's like, wow, now I got it. So it's really cool to see how the pieces of the puzzle all fit together. And then these are not very strong ligaments at all, but they're still very stringy ligaments in this badly distorted cadaver hoof. And they're attaching to the annular ligament, which is this thin 1 millimeter thick structure. And then that in turn is attached. These are normal attachments. So from P2 distally, some horses vary, but they're in the zone of P2. The digital cushion ligaments and annular ligament and deep flexor are all attached together. So in this video, this is a sadly distorted racehorse cadaver hoof, but you can see how it's stuck there. P2, annular ligament is just thin band right there, and all these ligaments are attached to that. So the heel bulbs are literally attached to to the deep flexor tendon. So in these horses, this was Scott Conley, and put my shoes on this horse. Chronic sheared heel, severe contraction, non-responder to barefoot, and in 2 weeks he had been sheared and contracted for at least 2 years. The owner purchased him like that and said, Scott, you can fix this, right? But then when he put my shoe on, boom, deep flexor, pulled everything back, heel bulbs came back up and out, and opened up. And same thing, this is Eric Parsons had done this horse. And we used my shoe on this one, you can see how badly distorted it was, heels on the ground. And after 2 sets of rust over 8 weeks, just look how those heel bulbs came up and out, and then got engorged, mechanics before perfusion. And then it goes into that, cushioning that the vascular picture has. So remember, the heel bulbs are attached to the deep flexor tendon. This was a horse with bad toe cracks. So I asked, would your shoe work for toe cracks? And I said, send me a picture of his heel bulbs. Like, oh, yeah. So here's what happened. And look at that sole, popped up, heel bulbs opened up, got confused.
What was the time frame on the last picture?
This one was 2 months. That one, 2 months, just 2 months. And then usually you'll see a response within, 5 days you'll start to see some subtle changes, and generally by 2 months with these chronic sole prolapse, you'll notice a big difference, and earlier in that time frame, but it's just dramatic. So he gave the deep flexor the leverage it needed, gave it toe space, that air space, and then it's like, okay, I can do my job now. So now getting to the ligament stuff. So we already went over the Cunium digital cushion, and this is 2 feet from the same horse. So this is 1 foot, rubbery frog spine, still has the frog left there. This one's invaginated, dead space. So these, you can stick a tongue compressor in there, and it's just dead space. And any thrush is secondary. And some of these you can get to open up if they've been in a shoe or haven't been trimmed properly, but something's missing back there in these hooves. And here you can see the no frog spine, yucky frog spine. So all this Cunium digital cushion, this lower outpouching, is puny. Here you can see it's better, more substance to it, and it will fit in these grooves here. So Cunium digital cushion is a ventral outpouching of the main digital cushion. It's more fibrous, and it's damaged and distorted. So here's, I got some cadaver hooves from a research herd that were unsullied and not shod or booted, so left to their own devices and a little bit of trimming. But this is what a healthier digital cushion looks like. And actually this roof is about 5 millimeters thick, very dense and fibrous, so you cannot indent that at all. So you can squeeze it together, but you can't indent it. And this is a 4-year-old racehorse, severe distortion, stretched out Cunium digital cushion, paper thin roof. Here's one that was squeezed together, it atrophied, going away. And then this one I got off the internet, which is incredibly valuable from naturalhorsetrim.com. Everything is atrophied. There is nothing there. So that is, aside from dermis, it's this Cunium digital cushion, which is again for the deep digital flexor tendon when it gets smashed down. So missing anatomy that nobody ever talked to us about as veterinarians, or you either, is this back of the foot. So look at the back of the foot. Do you want to be able to predict how this horse is going to do? I think giving owners predictive information puts their value so high. And this horse, 14-year-old quarter horse, has been barefoot for years, trimmed routinely by an excellent group of trimmers, and just invaginated heel bulbs, prolapse sole, prolapse coffin bone, no Cunium digital cushion, no rubbery frog spine. This horse is classic navicular toe landing, and everything's gone. So looking at these CT images from Dr. Taylor's study she did with Pete Ramey, we have the bad hoof, good hoof, and I noticed these things. So deep flexor, cartilage is curled in. What are these? And nobody knew. So let's ask Mikey. Let's ask Dr. Bowker. Dr. Bowker said, those are frog ligaments. And I'm like, what? Oh my God. Ligaments are something I ultrasound. And when I was down with Dr. Taylor ultrasounding hoof, which I usually hate to do, we were scanning a live horse through the frog, and I saw this dense band of tissue, and we're up by the apex of the frog, and I'm like, is that the deep flexor? She said, no, that's the digital cushion. I'm like, it looks like a ligament. And the deep flexor is down beneath that, kind of darkened out because of all this dense tissue. I said, that looks like a ligament. And sure enough, in veterinary textbooks, they say that I have ultrasound. I should know, but this is actually labeled as either the digital cushion or annular ligament, and it is neither. So it is the competochondroungulary, or CCU ligament, because I thought maybe these two things, these frog ligaments in the back, and this thing I saw with Dr. Taylor are actually connected. So I had to find this textbook from my brother, who was at Stanford and had interlibrary loans, to get this thing. And it was only referenced by Dr. Belker. So it's been taken out of anatomy books. And it's like there all along. The Germans dissected it out in the 1940s, but then after the 1980s, again, you know, it's not there, so it's not important. Well, it's not there because it was important. So I used ultrasound to follow this ligament that I found with Dr. Taylor, that I said, this has to be a ligament, and there it is, followed it, took the hoof capsule off, and I'm like, wow, that's so cool. So this is the path it took. So this is one of the pair of CCU ligaments, and this is the dissected hoof of that same ultrasound image. Huge, right there, and it's on either side of the deep flexor tendon, and it's been there all along. Unfortunately, in recent anatomy books that have photographs, they just label it as digital cushion. But here you can see distinct ligament fibers going through this 6-month-old thoroughbred, and then here this 3-month-old where I couldn't identify my ultrasound because they're still in the forming stages. So this actually develops as the horses mature and exercise. So that's, you know, what this whole keep your horses moving. It's like putting a kid in a boxing glove and leaving it on for most of its young life, and then you just got this hand like this, so move it or lose it. So here's a 2-year-old horse. You can see these white fibers, and this racehorse completely shredded out, thin, atrophied ligaments. So looking from the back, here are the CCU ligaments that go outside deep flexor. Here it is coming back to the navicular bone level. I call it the 4-way stop because they're all connected. There are 4 things connected right there, and that's really important to remember. And then here it is coming back through. We have all these ligaments branching through the digital cushion space. And this didn't have a lot of any fiber cartilage, really. Kind of wimpy. People might say, well, Reimer, these are pretty thin ligaments. What are you talking about? How can they do anything? And when I looked at them, I'm like, oh my God, these are like chordae tendonae on your mitral valve. They're heartstrings, literally heartstrings. And this is an ultrasound image, so they're thin little strings. And you know what happens when one breaks? You die. And it's sort of like a parachute. A cord breaks, you can die. So even though they're thin and little, at least in this horse, you know, they're important. And then obviously they get better ribs, they're probably coated in this fiber cartilage, so they're more robust. And this is a racehorse who peeled back the roof of the heel bulbs, peeled back the skin, and we're looking towards the outside. So these are all these ligaments that are important for the deep flexor to function. So we got these structures that are missing. So we have the Cuneian digital cushion and these 2 CCU ligaments. What do you see on the outside that clues you in you're in trouble? These stretched frogs. Don't think of the frog as, oh, it's a frog. It's a covering. So there's a Cuneian digital cushion that it's covering. That reflects the shape of the Cuneian digital cushion and the status of the CCU ligaments. So when you see a stretched frog, that means stretched Cuneian digital cushion, stretched CCU ligaments. Also notice this frog is slightly twisted, meaning Cuneian digital cushion is twisted, meaning the location of the deep flexor attachment to the coffin bone is not oriented with the rest of the hoof capsule. It's twisted in there. And then this horse, same thing, stretched Cuneian digital cushion, and some of this damage is irreversible, so you have to manage them like with an open-toe shoe or with my shoe where you just manage them barefoot, but have reduced expectations for soundness. And then the last ligament, this chondropulmonale ligament, is very dense, firm, and fibrous. And this is the back brace for the hoof. And it's very firm, and its flexibility comes from its attachment to the cartilages and into the dermis of the frog cleft. And this was a young juvenile hoof, and we just cut down, Dr. Casson and I cut down from the back down to the bottom, and there it was, very distinct, This is a racehorse which had a nice thick chondropulmonale ligament, thin digital cushion that actually this had fibrocartilage in on ultrasound, and then thin sole, but nice thick chondropulmonale ligament, CPL. And here I took the lateral to compare to lateral and stable hoof. So this is the right, that's the left. You can see difference. So this low bulbed hoof, even though the sole depth was the same, not very good, the chondropulmonale ligament was thin, digital cushion was thin, and no fibrocartilage in that. So what do you see on the outside? Sometimes it's hard to tell, but if you have horses with invaginated heel bulbs, one that come in and out, that's not a good sign. They don't have one. This cadaver hoof with, you know, wicked bad club foot, no chondropulmonale ligaments. This brood mare, just flaccid heel bulbs, nothing there. And this horse, stock horse, did have them. And so I did a solar dissection, which was hard to do. So I peel off layer after layer. But here you have the deep flexor tendon, and lying beneath that, one of the CCU ligaments. So it's very substantial and attaches to P3 alongside the deep flexor, shoots back as the deep flexor shoots up. And then you have this on the very back and bottom. This is the chondropulmonale ligament, and attaches across. And then there's this strong band coming down to the front part of the frog lift. And that's a distorted hoof, so that's not necessarily normal orientation. So unfortunately what's happened is veterinary medicine has dismissed heel bulb distortions as just a passive thing. Now you know there's a lot of anatomy underneath there, and so if the heels are contracted, remember how P2 and P1 are mashing down on that, doesn't take much. So all that anatomy is getting pummeled. So in spite of some people say, oh well, it's just passive, it's no big deal. It's navicular syndrome coming up on you. So all these stuff protects all these things that are damaged in the spectrum of navicular disease. So we have all this missing anatomy, and then these 4 ligaments also send these sprouts through the digital cushion space, and they may or may not be coated in fibrocartilage. And we have to ask ourselves then, not like, wow, how did this device work? How can I do that? We should prevent this from happening. So we have to ask ourselves, great, this happened, but we have to realize it wasn't like this before. And something's broken. So now, you know, all these things that are broken, how do they break? So you can see this happening where the heel bulbs are getting lower and lower and lower, where the heel bulbs are getting pulled down underneath the hoof, frog clefts migrating forward, and then on these other cases that tend to have more robust heel bulbs that have these CPL ligaments, what's happening is this whole coffin bone's being pulled down, being prolapsed, and their soles flatten out. So how does all that work? You know, the deep flexor has static action, trying to keep that hoof capsule back. You know, when your tricking horses come around, like it looks even better. But then there's dynamic action, and that comes to what we'll talk about in the next session. So the clues were, where I finally got this part. So here's Carson's before, and then after 8 months, all looks great, and he, you know, reverted again, but not to the same degree. And actually, Curtis Burns made us some polyflex, but it needed a wire, so it needs to be stiffer. So if you ever want to try this, you know, because he's been really busy, I'd love it if he made these for you. But I just use a Morrison open roller and just cut it and straighten it and grind it, and it works great. Even though it's 12 millimeters thick, it's very remarkably stable. So put these back on, and it didn't matter whether it was what I used, metal or polycarbonate or this. And in 2 weeks, went from that to opened up, sort of like that other horse with the chronic sheared heels, popped open. Like, oh my God, look at that pattern. So what spread the heels? And what spread the bars? What spread the bars, which are, remember, reflected, those are the cartilages, where the cartilages are. And why was there such a rapid response this time around? So the clues are right there. So what we'll talk about in the next talk is what is pressing on that to make that happen. And so it's all in Levi's favorite thing, the bones. So it'll all make sense here in the next talk. So I'm sure there are lots of questions. Yes.
So you talked about the height of that cloth shoe. You talked about a minimum of 6 millimeters. And you just talked about a 12 millimeter shoe that got burned. Where in there would you say is ideal?
Well, it made me nervous to use the 12 millimeter just because it seemed a lot of height and it might be unstable, but these are remarkably stable. It was shocking when I first did a horse in it, and I used the Morrison open roller back in, I think it was 2010, and I just needed to give him 2 weeks of a break because he had prolapsed soles from chronic being shot and coffin ball pulled down, he had stronger heel bulbs, and I used minimal acrylics. This is going to work. Just give it 2 weeks, 3 months. And I'm like waiting for the hoof to migrate forward, waiting for change, and nothing happened. And that was the full thickness, and so remarkably stable. And when I thought, oh, these have been on for 3 months, I should take them off. I really didn't need to, which shows you how much foot mass some of these horses have lost. So, but I think I'm comfortable with 8 millimeters. But if you're like, well, I'm just going to take this Polyflex. But remember, you want a stable heel base and to taper the toes. Those are key important things, which you may be able to incorporate other devices that you're using, like the open toe shoe, which we'll talk about next.
What about your environment? Is it very dry where these horses were? What is it?
No, this is Kentucky. So my horses, I did a study just on 3 of them, put all 4 feet and turned them out, and they were in a 14-acre field with mud and a stream to jump, and it doesn't matter. I mean, they were down in Florida, so the ones, and yeah, pretty much any environment, and it's amazing. So the mud and the acrylic weren't an issue at all. So and the hooves actually looked healthy. I mean, perfusion, once they started the mechanism, just fresh cleared up. It was great. Okay, any other questions?
Do you see the same type of behavior on horses that have an upright conformation?
Yes, amazingly so. So we'll have these horses with high-low, and it's weird, they self-adjust. So they're both distortions, and I think that's because we're able to get the P2 pressing down on these higher back tissues that spread the heels. But yeah, it was amazing, and some farriers are using it to fix these mismatched feet, and amazing, they correct. So, and then the point, I guess somebody had thought, proposed that maybe the way these foals graze cause high-low, and I was like, I don't know about that, but then I realized, oh my God, it makes perfect sense when we talk about the bones next, or we talk about, like, oh my God, now I'm getting at the actual impact of how the navicular bone and P2 are in different phases, so if they're extending one and flexing the other, so it makes more sense. But yeah, it's crazy how it does that.
Hang on, Garrett. God bless you, child. Speak out.
I told you I was going to ask a question.
Whenever you were talking about the CCE ligaments, you were talking about how you don't use them, you lose them. Does that apply to all ligaments in the horse?
I'd say it applies to us too. So it makes sense. So when people talk about, these horses are kept up, especially the young stock, and their feet contract. And you can see it even in barefoot horses if they're confined. Their feet will contract just like if we're put in a cast or a splint, even for a short period of time, like, oh, and then if you've been in a cast for a while, you get your hand out and your whole arm's stiff and you can't use it normally. You have to actually really do extreme things to get it to moving. So it's a ligamentous structure. So the back of the digital cushion is actually composed of ligaments. So the stuff about keeping them moving makes so much sense. It's a bone and ligament thing. So exactly what everybody had been trying to say, keep them moving. But then you got to realize that if you can find the hoof or keep that hoof capsule from moving, stuff's still going on in there, and you were going to get a blender effect on when these things break down.
What actually makes it, I don't really know how to word the question, but is it just blood flow from movement, or what is it that actually makes them grow or kind of loosen up again, or what is it that actually?
Oh, it's movement, so it's similar to us. We can sit around on a couch and not move, or we can start exercising and make stronger bones and ligaments, especially when you're younger, you know, and same in racehorses, they know they gotta get them moving earlier. So, and with kids, the more they're out and active, the better bone development and muscle and tendon strength they're gonna have. So it just is typical for all species to move it or lose it.
Anybody else got a question? Doug Russo. Speak up.
I'm confused.
Oh, God, bless.
Run, Tom, run.
Yeah, that's going to happen.
Hit him halfway.
Use it or lose it.
We need to put some raw shoes on Tom.
Yeah.
What I understood in the photos was that you're actually increasing the height of the heels, reducing the toe.
No, so when I did what I call heel tabs, which some of you already may be doing, just making, it's not elevated, they're just an extension of the heel, extending back to the hairline as much as possible, making it wider. But with the elevation, I make it equal, so it's 6 millimeters in front, 6 millimeters behind, or 8 and 8. So there's no wedge built into it at all. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, that's what I was asking.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank
So
you.
flat shoe.
All right, thank you.
Anybody else? No?
So you mentioned it a little bit earlier, but after extended use of these shoes, are you seeing any adverse effects on the toe quarters with these open-toed shoes, like any sort of conditions in the toe pillars?
Oh, with the
Stresses or anything up in the wall itself or in the coronary band?
with the Ross shoe?
Yep.
Yeah, none at all. So it's changing, you know, by giving the deep flexor leverage, it's able to pull everything back, and the coffin bones actually are, we have to realize now what the distortions are. So they're actually, the dome, they lose their dome, they're getting pulled down, so deep flexor is then able to pull everything up, and so the hooves look so much better, so you don't see the damage to the coronary band, none of that at all.
So do you also notice any difference in the sole, like strangulation in the sole where it's just atrophied and it thins out? You never trim it, it just thins out. It's just a divot. You might have a little bitty sole callus at the toe, and then there's just that big dip in front of the point of the coffin.
Don't know.
It's like it mimics the coffin, but it's an indention in the sole, and I call it strangulated sole because it's no longer functioning.
Okay.
It's usually very thin, usually less than 10 millimeters.
Yeah, I mean, the racehorses are 6 millimeters paper thin. But yeah, so this will, as Barbara said, perfusion is the key. And so these horses will start to lay down healthy sole and build callus like I've never seen before. And be able to, when you take the shoes off before they've distorted too much again, they're able to walk on gravel. And actually, Carson, I kept him in shoes for 2 years. He only had like maybe 5 days where he didn't have a branch on or something like that. And took him off, and he's far better. He's been bare for an additional 2 years. I thought, let's just see what happens. And his heel bulb's folded in again, but his coffin bone, I think, has remained stable, so it hasn't contracted again. But he's like, it's amazing the difference. I mean, you could press on his sole and heel and be flinching. So he was close to bad time. So it was great. And he's 23, galloping around, happy, acting like a 2-year-old.
Have you had any cases?
This has got to be the last question because we've got to move on to Michael and sitting here in a few minutes. So I invite, just real quickly, invite you to find Dr. Reimer on the periphery of the hall. She'll be available for questions there. Also, there's coffee at Bob this morning, so help yourself to that. And this last question.
Have you noticed any cases where you saw the signs you were looking for to try your shoe and you thought it would work, but you just didn't get the results that you were looking for?
Actually, no. Most of the time it's been when people have said they're not working, it's because they've used too much acrylic and they didn't set the shoe far back enough, and that is to keep that deep flexor tendon leverage. But collaborator, he said to me, I was trying to think of the indications for your shoe. And he said, everything should be in it. So it works when horses are paper thin sole, though. And what I want to do is look at other ways in applying acrylic directly to that, because they'll start to exfoliate, and it can be, not good. You don't want to do that to them. So again, hoof distortion is a soft tissue injury, so something that's very distorted, like just keep them comfortable, keep them walking. Put this on. Some of them might be a little sore if they're really prolapsed soles. Just in 3 days, they start to feel better. As you find sometimes with shoes, which the horse has been uncomfortable with shoes on, and they're like, oh my God, now I feel better after a few days. So it seems to be, I don't know about laminitis. I think for chronic laminitis, or wherever you used an open-toe shoe, that would be a reason to do this, or think about an open-toe shoe. And the heels may not, don't respond as well, but I think you can figure out which distortions are going to be useful. So I think the open toe, we have to look at that, take a new look at that, because I think a lot of lack of success was not tapering the toe, and also where you place your nails, and then categorizing, okay, what's the back of this foot like, and then know that if the deflexor is going to pull everything back up, you can't have the horse running around mashing on that metal bar underneath the frog, so you got to give them some time to build those tissues.